The heater always scares me every time it turns on. Hi, hello, my name is Jade and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new. In today's video, we are going to go over 2024 in books. My year review in books, because 2024 I started reading again. I've always read a little bit, but I like really got into reading. I used to be super into reading like this when I was younger, but I haven't been like that in a few years. So we're gonna go over the books that I read this year. I did read 46 books. I don't have all of them in my app because I know that there's a few that I didn't track, and then there's quite a few that I didn't like finish reading and I didn't put them in there. There's a few in here that I didn't read or like I didn't finish. These are not going to be in order of the way that I read them. Oh, by the way, I do have my tablet in my hands because I used an app called Storygraph to track my books last year, and I'm gonna be honest, the way that I did it wasn't right because I just kind of add all the ones that I read. I didn't put like dates or anything, so that's why they're not in order. But I can tell you the first book series that I read that got me on this journey. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses. I read that whole series, and there's 5 books in it, I believe. There's 5 books. One of them is a novella, so a lot of people don't count that book as like a full book, but there is A Court of Thorns and Roses, and that is what got me back into reading. Because if you guys remember, I started reading back in February when my friend went back to her home state and my husband went on a month-long boat debt, so he was gone for a month and I didn't get to talk to him, and my life kind of fell apart. Like, my sister was in the hospital, I was not having a good time trying to deal with my family, and yeah, I was not okay, and the weather was crazy. Like, we had funnel clouds, it was awful, it was just everywhere. But I decided to start reading, and I started reading A Court of Thorns and Roses. So that was the first book. And I read A Court of Mist and Fury, that's the second book. A Court of Wings and Ruin is the third. A Court of Frost and Starlight, that is a novella, so they count that as a half a book, so that says 3.5. And then A Court of Silver Flames, that is all 5 books, or 4 books, sorry. So that is all the books that I read. Those are the first book that I read. And then I started reading Fourth Wing. I'm so glad that I found Fourth Wing right after ACOTAR, which ACOTAR is like the shortened form of A Court of Thorns and Roses. But I'm glad that I found that right after, because I needed that super adventurous stuff. I am normally a mood reader. I was never someone that read fantasy. I was someone that only read like horror or suspenseful or stuff like that. And then last year, around like when I started reading, I delved into fantasy because my life was falling apart and I needed to not be here. And for a long time, that's what I wanted. Like, every time I went to look for a book, I was like, okay, it can't be real world. Like, no real world at all. So after ACOTAR, I went to Fourth Wing and then Iron Flame, which is the second book in the Fourth Wing. And the third one is coming out this month. Today is January 9th, and it's supposed to come out, I think, on the 20th or the 21st. So I'm very excited. By the way, I do listen to all my books because of my vision loss. I can't read, and also because whatever's going on with my eye right now, I can't read paper. Like, I'll be able to read for a little bit, and then everything will like look like a fogged piece of glass was put over my eye, and everything's just a color and vague shapes. So I listen, and I know a lot of people have big feelings about listening to books over reading books, but I'm blind, so I'm counting it as reading, because if I could read, I would. And that's also why they have a bunch of books that I started and couldn't end up finishing, because it was all like reading, like actually trying to read from the page. Okay, all of that. Then I went to The Witch Collector. Again, these aren't necessarily in the right order. I don't think I read The Witch Collector next, but that is number 1 in the series, and I fell in love. I don't know if any of you know anything about The Witch Collector, but the main character in that is someone who's deaf. I'm pretty positive that, yeah, she's deaf and she does sign language. Or maybe she's not deaf. Maybe she's mute. I'm gonna be honest, I can't remember if she's mute or deaf or both. Probably both. But I'm pretty sure she's deaf, so everyone around her has to sign, which I think is so cool to have like a main character who has a disability, and you don't see that very often in books. I'm tearing up because of this, because of what I've been dealing with in the past year and a half. It's really nice to see disabled people getting like main roles, because it's hard because we're not normal. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. Anyways, The Witch Collector has quite a few books right now out. I read The Witch Collector, City of Ruins, which is the second book of The Witch Collector. I did read the third book, and I can't remember. Hold on, let me find it. Because, again, they're not in order. The third book is a novella, or it says novella on the front, but I'm not actually sure if it is. But the third book is The Wolf and the Witch, which I did purchase that book. I have it in copy form. I couldn't read it because, again, I can't see. So I did have to wait until it was able to be heard, like until I could find the audio. I use the app Libby. It's like a library app. I don't know. Yeah, it's a library app, and I have a few library cards to a few different places. So that's where I honestly get most of my books. And I also read All of the Missing Girls. That was like kind of back to mystery, suspenseful type. I liked that one. I don't know. I'm not rating these. I hope that's okay. I don't really know what to rate them. I didn't rate them in my app. I just kind of, read them. The next book is The Cruel Prince. I'm gonna be honest. I didn't really care for The Cruel Prince. I didn't really understand the hype around it. So it took me a little bit to read this whole series, but I read The Cruel Prince. I read The Wicked King, The Queen of Nothing, and that's it. Those are all of the Cruel Prince books that I read. I think that's all of them. Honestly, I don't know why this is showing more books, because I've never heard of them, like Letters from Cardan to Jude, which makes sense. I know they talked about that in one book, but I have yet to read those. Again, I didn't love the series. I thought it was overhyped. I keep saying, I'm really sorry. That's probably annoying. But it took me a long time to get into them. I almost dropped the series, but I forced myself to finish it. I'm happy I did finish it. It's not a book I'm gonna go back to. There's definitely books, like I've read Fourth Wing and Iron Flame already, like multiple times. I've read ACOTAR, like the whole book series, multiple times already. So there are books that I will go back and read. It just happens to be that The Cruel Prince is not one of them. Okay, and then it gets into a little bit away from the fantasy. I read If He Had Been With Me, and that, I knew what was going to happen. Like in the beginning, I was like, okay, I know what's going to happen. But then there's like a twist at the end that I wasn't expecting, and it got me. It ran a stake through my heart, and I sobbed for days. I was not okay for days. There was a few of these books where I was just mentally not okay because of the endings. There are some books with really, really good endings, and some that really get to you. And If He Had Been With Me really got to me, which I honestly needed a good cry at that point in my life, so I was happy to read that. The In Between is a book by a hospice nurse, and I used to be a caregiver. I used to be a med tech / caregiver for elderly people. I used to take care of folks that were coming to the end. I did work with a hospice nurse for a little bit with one of my first residents. I can't say residents because I wasn't working for a facility. I was taking care of someone that I knew. Like, I was related to his family. I'm not related to. I was dating someone that he was related to, and they needed someone to take care of him, so I took care of him. And that's when I really got to work with a hospice nurse. She delved into a bunch of stuff and taught me a bunch, so reading that wrecked me in all of the best ways. I don't have a physical copy of that book, but I really want a physical copy. I loved it. The Way I Used to Be. That was kind of sad. That had trigger warnings. I actually don't know if it had trigger warnings, but it should have. because it had a lot to do with a bunch of hard topics. It was good. I wasn't like running to finish it super fast, but I did enjoy it. It was a good book. There's a second one to it, but it's not in audio, so I haven't read it yet. It was kind of all over the place, made my feelings kind of all over the place, but I did enjoy it. And then at one point, again, sorry, these aren't in order, I'm just kind of reading them off. I did read the first Throne of Glass. I did not read anything else because I had a really hard time getting into the first book. I read it and I was just like, okay, I don't really care. I don't think I'm going to read any more of the Throne of Glass. And The Nightingale. I loved The Nightingale. I loved The Nightingale. I think it's such a good book. It's like kind of historical in a way because it's talking about a war. It was so good. I loved this one. Loved it. Okay, the next one, I have no idea how to say it. I will put a picture right here. This is the next one. This is another one that I read. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't one that I would go reach for again. Like, I finished it because I have this thing where I kind of, for a long time, I could not finish a book. So I had to finish it. And during this time, when I was reading this book, I was in that phase where I'm like, I have to finish it. I can't DNF it. So I did finish it. There's more to it. I have not read any more in the book series. I don't think I'm going to, because I just didn't care for it that much. Next, I read House of Salt and Sorrows. I read both of the books. I read two in this series. I read House of Salt and Sorrows, which was really good. At first it didn't hold my attention, but towards like the middle it did, and I was like super wrapped in it, and I was really into it. Like, okay, not really, but I was like into it. And then the second one, House of Roots and Ruin. I did do that one. Honestly, I didn't really care for that one. I had to push myself pretty hard to finish that one. It wasn't great. I can't remember any of it. If that tells you anything. The first one was better in my opinion. And then I started the Bonds That Tie series. Now, I couldn't finish this whole series all in one sitting or like all right back to each other because I use the Libby app, which is a library app, and you have to check it out, and a bunch of people had it before me. So I broke this book series up. Normally I try to read them all at once, but sometimes that doesn't happen. So the first one is Broken Bonds. I read that one. Second one is Savage Bonds. I read that one. Blood Bonds. I read that one. Forced Bonds. I read that one. And Tragic Bonds. Also read that one. That's 5. And Unbroken Bonds. That's 6. I read all 6 books. Now, this type of book is not for everyone, so I would really look into it before you start reading it. I'm not going to really delve into what it's about, but I liked the series. Shockingly, I really liked it, and I continued to read it. Next, we have We Were Liars. This one was kind of hard for me to get into at first, but it was a really good book. It took a turn that I had no idea that was coming, and I was just obsessed with it at the end. And then I also read The Things We Leave Unfinished. And Rebecca Yarros, she's also the one that wrote Fourth Wing. You ripped my heart out, girl. The Things We Leave Unfinished. It is so good. Rebecca Yarros is a military spouse, or she was. I don't know if she's currently still a military spouse or she was a military spouse, but a girl kind of writes about it in some of her books. And it hits home, it hits hard. That's all I'm saying about that one. Loved it. I was in tears. I guess I read this book called For You. I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember it at all. I don't track books that I didn't read, so I know I read this because I go from Libby to this app and like put it in before I like return my book. So I can't tell you about anything about For You, so I don't know if it was good or if it was bad, if that says anything. I read Gilded, which is a little bit of it's a series. It was good. There's Guild and Gilded, so it kind of gets confusing because some people talk about Guild, and I think they're talking about Gilded, but no. I read Gilded. I haven't read Guild yet. That's in a series, but Guild Gilded was good. There's 2 books in it, and I read both books. I think there's 2 books. There's 2 books. There's Gilded and Cursed, and I read both of them. They were good. I got really into it towards the end. I enjoyed it. I'm not going to pick it up again, but it was good. I read Lights Out. Everyone is hyping that book up, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't really care for it. It wasn't for me. It wasn't for me. Again, I'm a mood reader, so my genre of books kind of jumps all over the place, and I try new things, and sometimes they just don't stick. There's a second book to it, Caught Up. I don't know if it's out or not, but I don't think I'm going to read it. Sad, but it is what it is. I read Daughter of No Worlds, which I really got into that one. It was really good in the beginning, so I got really into that book. Children of Fallen Gods, I guess I finished it, and I just don't remember it. I guess it was not that interesting to me. But Mother of Death and Dawn is where I DNF'd the series. I would like to pick that book set. I'd like to pick that one up again. I'm not sure if I will, but if it ever comes down to it and I'm not in the mood for anything else that I have, I might pick that one up and finish the series. I read The Silence That Binds Us. That one was good. That was good. At first it took me a little bit to get into, but then when I got into it, I really got into it, and I enjoyed it. Heart Still Beating. Yes, that one it wasn't emotional like I said it was. That's the next book. They have almost the same title. This one I do remember, it was like post-apocalyptic kind of. It was good. I wasn't racing to finish it, if I'm gonna be honest. It was good, but I'm not gonna pick it up again. Still Beating is the one I thought I was talking about. This one you need to read your trigger warnings. Read your trigger warnings. This one is a hard book to get through for some people. Not everyone, but some people that is a hard book to get through. It was a good book, and it felt really good to read because you saw the growth of the characters, and in a way I feel like it helped me grow in a little bit. Like just a little bit. Not like crazy, but it did. It was good. I really like that one. I did read House of Earth and Blood. This is Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first one. I read this in the beginning of the year because I was trying to read more of the Sarah J. Maas universe. I didn't like it. I did not like it. It took me so long to get through this book. It's kind of like Throne of Glass. It took me so long, but this one actually took a lot longer. I just could not get into it. I finished it and I started the second book. I did not finish the second book. I heard that they tied into ACOTAR, so I wanted to read it, but I couldn't. I didn't get through it. Then I read Kingdom of the Wicked. That was a good book. I enjoyed the first one. There are multiple in this series. I read Kingdom of the Wicked, Kingdom of the Cursed. I read both of those. Those were good. And then Kingdom of the Feared, I DNF'd it. I'm gonna be honest. I DNF'd it. I could not get into it. I know I was reading this series around the time we started to move, so that could be why I didn't get too into it. I would pick this series back up and try again. I also read When the Moon Hatched. This is a big book. My husband bought me the physical copy of it because I was still trying. I've been trying to read physical copies. It's a big book. And the glossary is huge. It was a good book. At first it was really, really slow. The middle picked up, and then the end. I am so excited for the next book. Most people didn't really get into it. A lot of people didn't like it. There's like controversy around that book. I liked it. It's a lot of world building, and I like that in books. I like world building. I just think some authors do it better, or some books are better at world building than others. I liked this one. That's Not My Name. I read that in the beginning of the year. That was a good one. That was more mystery. I wouldn't pick it up again, but it was a good book. If you're looking for something mysterious and like interesting, I'd recommend getting that one. At the end of this year, the end of 2024, I was reading Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, Assassin's Blade, and then I read 4 of the books, and then I started 2025 off with Queen of Shadows, Emperor Storms, and I'm currently on Tower of Dawn. So I'm on my 3rd book of the year already, and my goal is 50, like I said. I feel like that's kind of reasonable since I read 46 books, and there were chunks of time where I wasn't listening or reading because we were moving or we had stuff to do or I just wasn't in the mood. So I feel like 50 is like a safe number for me. And if I don't get it, I don't get it. That's fine. I just think it would be kind of cool to try. I am pretty proud of myself that I did get 46 books in. That makes me really happy. And like I said, I use Storygraph, so if any of you bookish people out there are on that app, we should follow each other so I can see what you're reading and you can see what I'm reading, because I love that. I love that. And I know that you can do like, I think they're like read-alongs or something. I think you can like set up to where you and another person are reading the same book, or I know that there's like a page where you can see what everyone is reading and you can just connect and see what they reviewed it or something. So I think that's like super cool. There's another app that a lot of people use to track their books, but I like Storygraph a lot because it like categorizes everything, kind of, it like tells you what your mood is or what your like pace is, or it just kind of gives you all of these stats. That's what I really liked. But that is 2024 books, the books that I read in 2024. I have no idea how to say this. That's my year in books. That's my year in books, and I am very happy to be reading again. And comment down below, what did you read last year? What are you reading now? Do you have a goal? Do you like to read? Are you a mood reader like I am? Or do you like certain tropes? Do you like certain genres? Like, I love talking about books. Love it. So comment down below. Let me know what you're reading.